And now, for the week of May 1st, Adobe Photoshop TV is on the air.
Welcome to Adobe Photoshop TV from the National Association of Photoshop Professionals. And here's your hosts, the Photoshop guys, Scott Kelby, Dave Cross, and Matt Kloskowski.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Adobe Photoshop TV. My name is Dave Cross. As you can see, with me today is no one. And I've taken full advantage of that to redecorate. I've got my Tim Hortons coffee, Canadian flags all ready to go. Actually, Scott will be joining us a little later. Matt is out of town, but I thought I would take this unique opportunity to make it all Canada all the time, at least for the first little while. So welcome. This show is brought to you by our usual collection of sponsors. We have DLO, CDW, iStock, Digital Juice, Logitech, and Yellow Machine. And we also have our regular set of things to do on this show. We'll be doing a whole series of tutorials. I have a tutorial, of course, for you. Scott will be here a little later tutorial. We're going to have Eddie Tapp doing a tutorial he filmed for us in Photoshop World. And we also have our first ever in-studio guest a little bit later on. So all that and the usual contests and all the things we normally do, just starting off a little differently for you today. So I'm going to start off with a little tutorial for you right away. A little effect, how you can change the look of a photo to have a very popular look. It's kind of a gritty, high contrast kind of look that's very popular today. So let's take a look at that, shall we? All right, so here's what we're going to do. Here's the photo I'm going to use. And there's a couple, I'm going to show you a couple of different possibilities on how to do this. The first one is I'm going to take advantage of the channels palette. I'm going to go look at the channels, and I'm going to try to find an image in here by looking at these individual channels that already has a lot of contrast. And it looks to me like the blue channel is going to be the one that's going to do the best job for us. So I'm going to take that blue channel and duplicate it. You want to make sure you duplicate it because you don't want to work on the original. Now we can do some things to make this even more noticeable. For example, I'm going to press Command L, which of course would be Control L on the Mac, to go into Levels so that we can just darken up. And I'm really just paying attention to his face at this point. That's the part I really want to create that extra little bit of contrast as you see there. All right, so now that I've done that, I'll go back to the RGB channel, go back to my Layers palette, and I'm going to duplicate the layer. So Command or Control J will be Duplicate. And now we're going to just start to try some different things. The first thing I'm going to do is go to the Image menu and choose Apply Image. We'll move this so you can actually see it. And I'm going to use as the choice of channel here, I'm going to use that blue copy that I made. And you'll see now as I start experimenting with some of these different blend modes, like here's Multiply mode, here's Overlay. That's kind of cool. I think this one I had before, Hard Light, actually looks pretty cool. So click OK, and look at the difference. If I hide the top layer, here's the original photo, and here's the way it looks now. You can see I'm already getting a pretty nice look. Now, the difficulty in this particular photo is I can't really see his eyes very much anymore because it's gotten so dark. So what I might need to do in this case is just add a layer mask, take my paintbrush, just get back. I've got some really weird brushes happening here, so let me reset my brushes palette so I can go back to kind of normal. There we go. And I just want to lower the opacity just a little bit. And you see this area right in here in his eye, that's what I'm talking about, where it's really too dark. So I'm just going to paint with a very small amount of black. And actually lower the opacity down to something in the 40% range. And as I click in here, you can see I'm just bringing back his original eyes a little bit. So that's one possibility. I'm going to hide that for a second just to show you another possibility. A very simple effect is just to duplicate the background layer and use a filter that's actually called High Pass. It's found here under the Other set of filters. Now normally if you keep the settings pretty low, this is actually a good way to sharpen the photo. We're going to deliberately go much, much higher so that most of that bit of gray that you saw disappears, something up in this range, depending on the resolution of your photo, of course, but pretty high amount. Click OK. And now all I do is once again play with the blend modes, a blend mode like Overlay. And again, let me just show you the difference before and now. And of course, we can even combine a couple of these together. Now, as always, we try and do these techniques in a way that's very easy to edit, so that whole thing was done making copies of the background and using layers so you can continue to tweak and experiment. So there you go, a very simple way to add that nice gritty, high contrast effect. And look, look who's joined me here on this set. It's Mr. Scott Kelby is back in town or
I had to
something.
bring the multinationalness back to the show.
You notice the decor has changed back to the...
un-Canadiacized it. Now we're an international
Yes,
show.
we are.
Appealing to everybody. Well, welcome. Why am I saying welcome to you?
Yes, well,
Hi,
in,
Dave.
In
Welcome
some ways
me.
it is welcome. Welcome, Scott. It's
Thanks,
good to
Dave.
see
Thanks.
you.
It's good to be here. Holy cow.
And we are missing one person. I kind of alluded to it briefly, but Matt is in Las Vegas, actually, doing a bunch of teaching at a big conference
gambling
there.
Oh, yes, he's
Yeah.
teaching. He's teaching in Las Vegas. He's gambling and teaching. He's gambling on teaching. No, he's out at the National Association of Broadcasters Conference teaching. NAPP has a booth there on the show floor, and he's working the booth and doing sessions and teaching on the conference tracks. He's very, very busy.
Right. So people will be
Hey,
back
I've got some news. You mentioned that we have a special guest. It's our first special guest. Well, Lisa Snyder is here from the Graphics Reporter. She is going to be here doing a tutorial, and she'll be teaching at Mac Live, of course, as well.
Yeah.
So we're very excited. We've never had anybody here in the studio, and I don't know if we have room for them. So we're going to have to figure out, where do you put the guest? I don't know, behind the truss or something. But she'll be here a little later. But in the meantime, I brought us a tip.
Oh, excellent.
I brought my tip this time is, it's actually 2 tips in one. It is a tip for softening skin, so it's more of a portrait retouching kind of thing. And it's for softening the skin, and of course, you would not necessarily soften skin on portraits of men because we want tough skin, coarse, manly skin. But if you're softening, working with portraits of women, of course, you want nice, smooth, soft skin. So we're going to look at 2 different ways to do that, and we'll show you how to do it right here. So, first off, here's the portrait that we want to soften. And if you look up here in her forehead, you can see that there's a little bit of, what's the word I'm looking for? Texture, I think is the right word. And that's exactly what you don't want in portraits of women. You want it to be very, very nice and smooth. So the technique we're going to use is to do this. First, bring up the layers palette and duplicate the background layer. So just go ahead and drag it to the new layer icon, or use the shortcut Command-J, or on PC Control-J to duplicate the layer. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go under the filter menu, under blur, and choose Gaussian blur. We'll bring up the Gaussian blur dialog box right here, and we're going to blur this layer. And just make it nice and soft so where the skin looks really soft. And of course, all of her looks really soft, but that's the idea. All right, now that we've got that in place, what we're going to do is we're going to lower the opacity. So go to this layer opacity. I'll zoom in so you can see here. Go to the layer opacity and drop it down to about 50%. And by 50, I mean not 32. Don't laugh, Dave. Sorry. There we go, 50%. All right, something like that. Now, the skin is nice and soft now. You can see the texture is almost gone. It's got that nice, smooth glow that you've seen over and over again. The problem is everything else is soft too. So what you're going to do is this, to make sure the rest of it doesn't look soft, because you only want the skin soft, not the whole photo soft. Now, before we go on to this next step, I do want to say, there may be times where you do want the entire image to be soft. But in this case, we're going to try to bring back some detail by clicking on the layer mask icon right here at the bottom of the layers palette, and go ahead and grab a paintbrush. Make sure your foreground color is set to black. And now you're going to paint over the areas that would normally have detail, like her eyes here, right? Let's shrink the brush down a little bit. I'm using the bracket keys, by the way, on my keyboard to change size of the brush. Let's paint over her eyebrows like that. The bracket keys are located just to the right of the letter P on your keyboard. Okay, the right bracket key makes your brush larger, the left bracket key makes it smaller. Go over her lips, all right, and then right here at the corners of her mouth there, and maybe just a little edge of her nostril so it doesn't look soft. Now, once you've gotten the detail areas covered, then you'll also want to do her hair and all this other area. Well, I'm going to show you a little trick to make that a lot quicker. Let's go ahead and just kind of do this area right here. And I usually get the ears too, because I mean, your skin doesn't have to be that soft around your ears. See, there, it looks a little better there. I'm going to make the brush a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to show you a little trick to help speed this. Now see, I'm bringing back the detail in her hair, so her hair looks nice and sharp. When you add these sharp areas, it makes the whole image look sharp, and then we'll go kind of around here like this. Now, if I show you a before and after by hiding the layer, watch. You can see that wow, her skin looks much, much smoother here, but other parts of the image are still soft. Here's the trick. Hold the Option key on Mac or the Alt key on PC and go to nice.
That's a nice picture.
Nice picture. Well, you're doing that to just display the mask. All right, so then now you can see that everything that you paint in black is going to be nice and sharp. So You notice that if we fill in all this other area with black, this is just much easier than trying to guess by looking at the photo which parts you missed here. So, and it also just makes a dandy, dandy photo.
You can hang that on your refrigerator.
You can hang it on your refrigerator and say it was by your kid. All right, there we go, something like that. All right, and then I'll just show you a quick before and after. Then I'm going to show you part 2, which takes about 30 seconds. All right, part 2 is a Dave Cross trick. Dave does a similar effect to this, but what Dave does is he uses a completely different filter. What Dave does is he goes under the filter menu, under blur, and he chooses surface blur. Now, the nice thing about surface blur is it does do that nice softening of the skin, but at the same time, if you use it judiciously, it doesn't really make the eyes or the lips too soft. So look at the skin. Remember that texture that was here? It's kind of smoothed it out fairly nicely, but at the same time, her lips still have detail, the edges of her nose still have detail, and the eyes and eyebrows still have detail too. I'm using a radius of 2 and a threshold of 15. If you want the effect to be increased, believe it or not, lower the threshold, something like that. So there's a couple different ways to get a little soft skin effect there. All right, so thank you, Mr. Cross, for sharing that little extra tip with me, because when I showed it to Dave earlier, he said, oh, let me show you how I do it. And so it's another way to learn on the set, I like to call it, learning on the set when the guy next to you goes, oh, by the way, here's the way. Hey, it's time for a quick break, right?
Yes, it is.
Stick around. We will be right back right here on Adobe Photoshop TV. Got lots more cool stuff coming right up.
Well, welcome back to Adobe Photoshop TV, and I have with me now a very special guest, our first in-studio guest ever, Miss Lisa Snyder, or should I say Mrs. Lisa Snyder King, I suppose I should say.
Thank you,
Dave. Lisa is one of those multi-talented people. She writes tutorials for our NAPP member site.
I do.
Right?
Every
week.
week.
You also have your own website. What's that? Give us a little bit on that.
GraphicReporter.com. Bunch of free tutorials over there.
And you're also here officially representing iStock.
I am officially. I am their new chief evangelist.
Awesome. So you travel the world spreading the gospel of iStock
Spreading
or
the
something like
iStock love wherever I go. Absolutely,
Excellent.
Dave.
Well,
it's a fabulous resource, and so I tell everybody about it.
We certainly, as our audience has seen, we use iStock photos all the time because we can always find what we're looking for there. So now, along with all those things you do, you've brought a little tip or tutorial for us today.
I may have brought a little something special.
It's top
secret bag of tricks here. I'm going to share with you a way to go to iStock Photo and find the perfect digital picture frame to pop your photos right into the center of. Half the fun for me of taking a picture is finding just the perfect picture frame. So instead of going to all that trouble in Photoshop and creating it from scratch, I'm going to show you how to get one for just $1.
Awesome. Let's take a look.
All right. The first thing I need to do is tell you how I found this beautiful picture frame. It's a gloriously gaudy picture frame. I found it over at iStock Photo. I did a search on gold picture frame, and it came up with 246 of them, to be exact. And the photo that I'm going to plop into it is landscape orientation. So the first thing we want to do is flip this puppy around. I'm going to double-click the background layer to make it editable, and I'm going to press Command-T on the Mac, Control-T on the PC to bring up our good friend Free Transform. Now I'm going to Control-click on the Mac or PC right-click in the center of the transform area, and I'm going to bring up a little contextual shortcut menu, and you're going to see an option to rotate 90 degrees, either clockwise or counterclockwise. It doesn't matter which one you pick. So now I want to say OK to accept my transform. Now you notice I need a little bit of wiggle room. My canvas size is a little too small. So I'm going to choose the crop tool by pressing C, and I'm just going to draw a bounding box around my document. And I'm going to pull out the right handle just a little bit and pull out the left handle just a little bit to encompass the girth of our gloriously gaudy gold picture frame here. Press return to accept the transform. Now I'm all set.
Now I'm going to bring up the photo that I'm going to put into this pretty frame. And it's kind of a retro-looking couple that is just getting married here. I'm going to select all by pressing Command-A on the Mac or Control-A on the PC. I'm going to copy it, Command-C on the Mac or Control-C on the PC, and I'm going to double-click the top of this window to get rid of it, because now I don't need that photo anymore since it's on the clipboard. Hop back into the picture frame document, and what I need to do here is select the inner bit of the frame. Now, since it's white, I'm going to reach for the magic wand, because that is the perfect tool for selecting by color. Select the magic wand by pressing W, click once inside the white area of the picture frame. Now, before you jump ahead of me and you do paste, I want to show you the trick. Go up under the Edit menu and choose Paste Into. That's the only way this trick will work. Now, if you're watching the Layers palette over here to the right, you can see how our photo is kind of masked. You can only see the area that appears inside the picture frame. Now, you'll notice it's a little bit larger, or it's a little bit higher resolution rather than my frame. I'm going to again summon our good friend Free Transform. Press Command-T on the Mac, Control-T on the PC. And I'm just going to hold my Shift key down as I grab the corner handles and just resize that puppy, just like that. Grab the top handle, and holding Shift while I'm doing that sizes the photo proportionately so I don't get, you know, their faces all squished and they look whoppy-jawed, for lack of a better term. So get that thing sized right down just where I want it. Press Return to accept the transform, and I'm going to press V to select my Move tool, and then I'm going to move the photo into just the right spot inside the frame. Now, since that's all done, it's time to add our obligatory drop shadow. So what we want to do is go over to the Layers palette, click back on the frame layer, and I want to zap the white area that's around the frame. Again, since I want to select by color, I want to reach for the magic wand. So I'm going to press W to select the magic wand, click once inside the white area, and then I just want to zap those pixels by pressing Delete. Now I want to get rid of my marching ants by pressing Command-D on the Mac to deselect or Control-D on the PC. Send those marching ants away. And now I can head down to my Layer Styles button at the bottom of the Layers palette, the little cursive F, and choose Drop Shadow. And when that very petite dialog box comes up, I want to lower the opacity to about 50% because I like it to be a little softer. And I'm going to increase the drop shadow size to about 10. And I'm going to mouse over to the document itself and pull my drop shadow down just a little bit and to the left. Press OK to send that dialog box away. Now I want to add a layer directly below this frame layer so we can see the beauty that we have truly created here. So I'm going to Command-click the new layer icon at the bottom of the Layers palette. If you're on a PC, that's Control-click. This adds a new layer directly below the one that you're currently on. Now I want to fill that layer with a color. Since I already have white as my foreground chip, that's fine. I'm going to press Option-Delete to fill that layer. If I was on a PC, that's Alt-Delete to fill that layer with that color. It looks pretty good. The last thing I do to add a little spark of creativity to our creation here is to rotate the frame just a touch. What I want to do, and I'm going to move my Layers palette over so you can see this pop-out menu, I need to merge the top layer, the photo layer, with the frame. So I'm going to click back on the photo layer, go up to the Layers flyout menu, trot on down to merge down, and now our frame and our photo are attached to each other. So now I'm going to again summon our friend Free Transform by pressing Command-T or Control-T on the PC. And I'm going to position my cursor just to the bottom right of this frame, and I'm just going to drag up and to the right just a bit, just enough where it looks like it's hanging off the wall.
Now you said you found how many frames when you did a search there for
It's
that?
240
and that was
some
just for
odd
that
frames.
particular keyword that you looked for.
Just
so.
for gold picture frame.
Awesome. Well, that's just one example why iStock is such a great resource, because you can find so many images on there. Now, tell our viewers where they can find out. We mentioned your website, but tell them again where they find it.
It's graphicreporter.com, and you can also find loads of tutorials. If you're an NAPP member, just go on over to photoshopuser.com, and I usually have a featured tutorial of the week, and you can search on Lisa Snyder and find all kinds of good stuff.
Awesome. And now Lisa may not know this yet, but we always, anytime we have an in-studio guest, we're going to put them to double work. And since Matt is not here, Lisa will be back a little later with the Photoshop news. So we will see her a little later. But right now, we'll be right back after this brief message. Stay tuned for more Adobe Photoshop TV.
Alrighty, everybody, we are back. I'm Scott Kelby. Joining me is Dave Cross. And hey, speaking of the Mac Live Conference, we are going to be there. I'm teaching there. Dave Cross.
That's right.
Lisa Snyder. Matt Rockin' the House Kloskowski will be there. And a whole host of other Photoshop luminaries coming to the Jacob Javits Center in New York City, May 11th, 12th, and 13th. So that's right around the corner.
It sure is. And still time to register, either online or even show up the day of and register on site.
Absolutely. Go to maclive.com. And it's not just us teaching there, of course. There's people like Bert Monroy, Katrine Eisman. It's a who's who of design and graphics. It's not just Photoshop. It's all the Creative Suite stuff. It's the InDesign, Illustrator, all that kind of stuff. But also the video side. We have a whole video. Every day there's a video track on Final.
And it's not just Mac only. When you see a class on Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign, it doesn't really matter what platform you use.
And it's not just people. It can be animals. It can be anyone.
Anyone.
So
we'll take your
come on
money.
down. All the cool people will be there. I'll be there. Dave. The whole crew will be there. Of course, our executive producer Pamela won't be there. So she's not cool, but all the cool people will be there. I hope that you'll join us there. Now it's time for the news, right, Dave?
That's correct.
And joining us now, Matt usually does the news. He's not here today, so we have our special guest, Lisa Snyder, is going to be over in the Action News Center. She took the golf cart, she went over to the Action News Center, and she's going to be right there with the news here in the Storm Team Photoshop News Center. Miss Lisa Snyder.
It's the Photoshop Action News Center with Storm Team coverage from Lisa Snyder. She's not Matt.
Thanks, guys. This week's headlines in Photoshop news include Apple has released a 17-inch MacBook Pro featuring the new Intel chip Core Dual, blah, 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 blah. Also, Software Cinema has announced the Best of Dean Collins Fine Light Video DVD set featuring the late Dean Collins. All proceeds of this fabulous DVD set, the sales, are going to go to CureSearch, the world's largest pediatric cancer research center. Also, I have a couple of important date changes to announce for the Photoshop Seminar Tour. Bert Monroy is going to be visiting Salt Lake City on June the 1st, and Dave Cross is going to be visiting Nashville, Tennessee, my home city, on June the 2nd. So be sure and mark those date changes down. Also in the news, I want to talk about the Photoshop World Seminar Scholarship. Photoshop World Scholarship was created to give students a chance to learn breakthrough techniques and to give them a chance to mingle with all the graphics professionals and the instructors that are going to be in and around Photoshop World. 25 students are going to get free admission to the conference to explore all the wonders of Photoshop World. The value of the scholarship is $599, and it includes a full one-year membership to NAPP. The deadlines for entries is July 14th. That's all for this week. Back to you guys.
Alrighty, thank you, Lisa, for the Photoshop news.
Yes. Now, before we go too far, before anyone makes any post on the blog
or sends us emails,
here's what I have to tell you. No, Lisa can't come every week instead of Matt. I know we'd love to have her here.
That's true.
Does a great job, but she lives far, far away. And as much as we'd love to have her here, after this week, it's going to be back to someone else doing the news. So just so you know, so we don't get all those little notes on the blog.
Email, thousands of emails. All right. Okay. That being said, we had a special guest who is also not Lisa. His name is Eddie Tapp, and he is just a brilliant, brilliant Photoshop trainer. He trains at Photoshop World. He trains all over the world in workshops. He's a Canon Explorer of Light, just an incredible trainer, an incredible guy. We cornered him at Photoshop World. In fact, Eddie's been on the show before.
Yes, he has.
And Dave cornered him, I believe, at Photoshop World. And what was his tip? Something cool?
It was very cool. I remember that much.
Wow, it's a tip, and it's going to be really cool, I'm sure, because all of Eddie's tips are cool. So stick around. Here is Eddie Tapp, live from Photoshop World.
All right, once again here from Photoshop World. This time I'm here with Eddie Tapp, well-known educator and photographer. And Eddie's you've been teaching a bunch of classes here at Photoshop World.
What a great time we've had here in Miami.
Hasn't it been awesome? Miami's been great.
Yeah.
And one of our great benefits, of course, is being able to grab all these people away and let them to share a few tips. So you brought a little tutorial for us this time around?
I'm pretty excited what we're going to go through today, Dave. It's going to be a little bit on the edgy side, you might say, because I want to see how we can create our own custom edges with what's built right into Photoshop, and it's pretty neat.
Awesome.
That's what's there and available for us.
Great. All right, well, let's take a look. Beautiful.
It's going to be so fun getting this set. I'm going to move this picture right into the screen here, and let's bring out the layer palette. The first thing I want to do is create a selection using the marquee tool anywhere, and it really doesn't matter where this is because eventually this can be changed. What's important now is to create a blank layer, and I'll just click on the new layer in the button in the layer palette, and let's fill this with pixels. Just anything will do. We'll go to Edit Fill and select, let's just select the foreground color. It happens to be black, and let's do this at normal 100%. 100%. And now we just have black. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change that to white just so we can see it better. Now it's really important at this point that we deselect the active selection. I'm going to select deselect, and now I'll go to Filter, Distort, and Displace. And it's so cool when you use a displacement map on this layer because it creates the pattern that we want for this edge. The horizontal scale, I'm going to change this to 20 horizontal and vertical, and that'll just extend the effect outside just a little bit bigger. And now we have to navigate into the Applications folder, into Photoshop CS2, and then into the Presets and something called Textures. And it's in here where we can actually apply a displacement map or a texture map to this layer. Incidentally, if you go to the Photoshop CD, put it in your computer, and on that computer, if you look on the CD on your desktop, you'll see a folder called Goodies, and inside the Goodies folder you'll find a Textures folder, and you can take all of those textures and put them in this folder and have a greater selection than what you're seeing here. We're going to run Frosted Glass. As soon as I select OK, watch what happens to the edge. That looks pretty cool. Let's go back and do that once again under Filter, Distort, Displace. We'll just go ahead and select OK this time, and let's select a different filter. Let's go with Stucco 2. And we can just add multiple displacement maps and get all kinds of cool effects for the edge of our image. What I'm going to do next is hold down the Command key on the Mac, which would be Control key on Windows, and click on the icon in the Layers palette of the thumbnail. That gives us an active selection of this edge. At this point we can go ahead and throw away the layer because it's no longer needed. We have our active selection. On this image, let's just go ahead and duplicate the background layer, and all we have to do now is click on the Add Layer Mask icon to create the effect. Of course, you're not going to see anything because we have the same picture on top and bottom. If I uncheck the visibility icon, you can see where the edges are. Let's go ahead and add a drop shadow, and that will give us a greater appearance of our edges here. The next thing we're going to do is select the background layer. I'm just going to highlight the background layer, and at this point we can create an adjustment layer with curves or levels or any other type of adjustment. But what I want to do here is just brighten up the background. I'm going to pull the node from the bottom upward to create a little brighter look. You see how that's giving us that cool effect. Well, actually, I don't want to do this. I think that could be a neat way to do it. I want to do something a little more unique. For instance, if you look at the layer palette, and what I'm going to do for you is zoom up on the palette for just a moment. If you look at the layer palette, we have the link between the mask and the picture. If I undo the link, I'll just click on the link, and now the picture and the mask are separate. What that means is what we can do now is I'll click on the mask part, and you notice the little frame around the mask. Here's the frame around the picture, around the mask. We can now go to Edit, Free Transform, Edit, and Free Transform, and we can change the position of where our edges are actually resident, which is kind of cool. And I'm going to do something really awesome here. I'm going to duplicate this layer that has the edge effects on it and go to Free Transform. Let's make sure we click on the actual mask itself, and I'm going to change the location of this mask. As a matter of fact, let's do a little distortion here of this with the Free Transform. I'm holding down the Command key on the Mac, which would be Control key on Windows. Just coming up with something a little bit different here. And now we have two edge effects. But there's more. And watch what I'm going to do at this point. I'm going to click on the first edge effect layer that we had, and now let's go ahead and create another adjustment layer. This time we're going to use hue and saturation. And what I'm going to do here is just colorize that layer. And let's come up with a neat looking color hue. Purple will do. And what I forgot to do is create the mask. So I'm going to, once again, hold down the Command key on the Mac and click on my mask on the first layer. Let's go ahead and inverse this. We'll go to Select and Inverse. And let's just fill that with black paint. So the best way to do that at this point is to hold down the Option key and type Delete. Oh, no, that wouldn't be that. It would be the Command key and type Delete. And now, as you can see, we have the original background here with the curve adjustment. On top of this, we have our first edge effect, and then we have the hue and saturation, the purple look, and that's feeding the purple to this layer. And then with the copied layer with the background edge effect that we've stretched out here, we've kind of got a unique look. Now, this is a little bit different looking than what I plan to do, but it gives you an idea how we can create our own edge effects and do some creative enhancements right here in Photoshop. Well, the beauty of this is actually kind of feeling it as you go and doing something you haven't done before, just discovering a new way to do something. I like the spontaneity of going in and creating something and then creating something out of that. And that's what Photoshop allows us to do,
Right.
is to just explore and come up with something different each
And I
time.
love the fact that you did that all with everything above the background layer. So everything's a layer mask, so if you decide to
Right.
change your mind and try applying a filter to that, or, I mean, really the sky's the limit, and that's a great concept.
And hey, if you don't like that purple color, you can change it to green
Exactly.
too.
Yeah, green or magenta, anything you want.
There
That's
you go.
great. Now, tell us a little bit about where people find out more about what you're up to.
Well, thank you. Well, they can visit my website, which is eddytapp.com. That's with an IE and 2 P's. And on there's a schedule page, and what we have coming up this fall is a very exciting tour with the legendary Monty Zucker. It's going to be a Monty Zucker Eddy Tapp tour.
Awesome.
We're going to do 15 cities and 18 seminars, and they're going to be really fun education where Monty's creating images and I'm going to process them. We'll be doing a lot of things just like this. And also, I'm working on another class session for NAPP on doing a technique very similar to this. So I'm very excited about
Great.
that. A little more advanced, perhaps.
Awesome. Well, Eddie, thanks again for your time. We really appreciate you stopping by, and that's the kind of tutorial you'll always see on Adobe Photoshop TV that you can take and run with it.
Awesome.
All right, well, thank you very much for that, Eddie. And now it's contest time.
Yes, it is. And as we always do, first of all, we need to talk about last week's contest. We had, as we always do, a question. And last week's question was, how do you hide the effects of a layer mask? And I actually said there were 2 possible answers, but I realized afterwards there were actually 3 possible answers. So we accepted any one of those, the 3 possible ways.
We don't care. We accept any
as long as
answer.
one of them is correct somewhere
Spelling
along the way.
counts, though.
That's very true. So the 3 different ways were to either go to the layer menu, to layer mask and disable, to either shift click on the layer mask thumbnail, or to right click on the layer mask thumbnail and choose disable. So any of those were acceptable answers.
You know what's nice? That you don't actually show them that on the computer, but you use your finger.
I use my
and
fingers
think
like I'm
that's kinda
pointing to
cool.
the thing.
Yeah,
to
it's
say-
like, just use the finger. That's kind of nice.
shift. It's right over here by the pull
Shift
down.
down.
And through the magic, as we always do at post-production, the winner of that contest was
This lucky person.
this lucky person here. Now, we have some prizes for this week, do we
Right.
not?
For this week, we do. We've got 4 fabulous prizes. First, the winner of this week's contest will win the best book ever written about the Adobe Bridge, Secrets of the Adobe Bridge, book by Terry White, an unbelievable book for learning the bridge and learning the secrets of the Adobe Bridge. You're also going to learn win this book. This book is called Window Seat. It's from Julianne Cost. And Julianne, of course, is Adobe's own graphics evangelist. But her book is about her photography taken from the window seat of a commercial plane. It's absolutely
Very
amazing. It's one of the coolest books. Everybody's talking about this book. And there's a little bit of Photoshop too into it, but it's just, her art is just amazing. So you're going to win that. Also, you're going to win a Mac Live full conference ticket, right? Full conference ticket to Mac Live. So that's coming right around the corner. And because Lisa Snyder was here in honor of the International Lisa Snyder Day, you're going to win 50 downloads from iStockPhoto.com, our wonderful sponsors, and friend of Lisa Snyder.
Yes.
All right, so that's what's up with this week's contest. What's the question,
The
Dave?
question is, where in Photoshop do you find a tool that lets you make a star shape? So you have to be very specific, but where do you find the ability to make a
Because
star
we use our
shape
fingers
star
instead
shape
of computers.
star?
Right, the
So
star
if you
shape.
go to the Adobe Photoshop TV website, you'll see the little click here to enter the contest.
That's right. Just click there
Right
because
there, where
we
I'm
can't
pointing.
afford mice or Wacom tablets. Okay. Hey, couple things. Don't forget, Photoshop World Conference registration is open. If you want to come to Photoshop World in Las Vegas, which is coming up on September 7th through 9th or something like that, go to photoshopworld.com. Registration is open. Now, we like to end each show with 3 projects or things to do between this week and next week. So, Dave, what's your project for this week?
Well, I have several. The first one, actually, I have 2, I guess, because you have one. The first one is to go to informate.com. They have a whole series of these things they call reference guides, and one of them is the Photoshop reference guide done by none other than our friend Matt Kloskowski. So if you go to informate.com and check out that reference guide, it's a whole bunch of information about Photoshop.
All right, mine is to go to Planet Photoshop. Now, Planet Photoshop is basically a tutorial and a resource site. There's all kinds of tutorials and articles and reviews and news. Great place to go if you're into Photoshop, so check it out at planetphotoshop.com.
Very cool. And I also have a website. It's a kind of a cool thing. It's called pixchannel.com. And as always, all the links we mention here will be on the website, because otherwise I'd have to point to all the letters. And it's kind of an inspirational website that features little biographies and video interviews with a whole bunch of the leading photographers of the current day. So all worth checking out.
And again, our website, of course, is photoshoptv.com. There is a blog there where you can post questions. We can't answer them because we get thousands and thousands of questions, but we do try to answer as many as we can by doing tutorials and things. But of course, we wind up doing about 1 or 2 per show, and we get thousands and thousands of questions. We get thousands of entries. We had somebody ask this week, you know, I've been entering your contest every week, and how come I haven't won yet? Because I've entered every week. Well, we get an average of 6,000 to 10,000 people that try to win that every week. So if you haven't won, it's not because of anything other than
that's right, just the numbers.
Just a
so
numbers
keep entering.
Game. Keep entering game. Well, that's it for this episode of Adobe Photoshop TV. I'll have to thank our sponsors. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week right here on behalf of myself and the great country of Canada's own Dave Cross.
See ya.
See you guys next week right here on Adobe Photoshop TV.
Thanks for watching Adobe Photoshop TV. See you next week.